this video, we're going to talk about self-defense and varying different degrees of self-defense, things like imperfect self-defense. The term self-defense gets thrown around quite often when you're talking about battery cases or domestic violence cases. And it's not as simple as, can you hit back if someone hits you first? Here's what the law says about self-defense and the differences between perfect self-defense and imperfect self-defense. So what counts as self-defense or a perfect self-defense? Basically, you may use force if you reasonably believe that you are in imminent danger of being harmed. The force must be proportionate. You can't use deadly force if you don't perceive deadly force. You usually cannot be the initial aggressor, although there are some exceptions if you withdraw, but in general, you cannot be the initial aggressor in a fight and then use self-defense. Examples of like a legitimate self-defense case would be someone that is stabbed. You're out at a bar with a friend and someone stabs you, and you pull a knife and stab the other person that just stabbed you as a way to thwart them from continuing the attack. That would be a perfect self-defense case. Now, you could do a couple of different things with that. You could ask for immunity. There's a procedure in which, when your case is initially filed, you can file an ulterior motion and ask for immunity, saying the state cannot continue to prosecute me. Judge, I need you to make a determination right now that the state has to drop this case. That happens, but is not super common. Another one would be just to save your defense for a trial. You have a criminal case, you work through the criminal case, you get the evidence, you determine you have a self-defense claim, you go to trial, and then at the trial, you ask the judge for a self-defense instruction based on the facts of your case. Now remember, when you're arguing self-defense, you have to have a subjective and an objective belief that the force is reasonable. You yourself had to perceive that you needed to use self-defense, that there was a threat of some sort of force, and that you, a reasonable person in a like or similar situation, would also have perceived that they needed to use self-defense. That's how you get a perfect self-defense case. Now, what if you don't have one of those things? Well, that's what you call imperfect self-defense. This happens when the person genuinely believes that they were in danger, but that belief was unreasonable under the circumstances. In other words, you don't meet both the subjective and the objective belief that's required by perfect self-defense. Now, why does this difference matter? Perfect self-defense versus imperfect self-defense. Well, perfect self-defense can be a legal defense. In other words, you can be found not guilty of a crime based on a lawful exercise of self-defense. Imperfect self-defense is a partial defense. Basically, it can take a higher level offense, like a second-degree murder, and turn it into a voluntary manslaughter. In other words, it can take a higher level offense and bring it down. The thought behind that is we can still punish people for making a mistake, but they don't have to be punished at the same level as someone who intentionally did something wrong. The things to take away from this is it's complicated. I know these decisions to exercise your right for self-defense happen in a split second, but there are complicated legal issues after the fact. Self-defense isn't a free pass to just go out and hurt someone. It has to be reasonable, necessary, and proportional.